I missed our Light and Life community. I took a bit of a break. I hope you'll forgive my break this season. I personally needed the time to get recharged, rejuvenated, renew my mind. Sometimes we think you could just press a button and sermons come out. It's not that easy. So I appreciate your patience waiting for allowing me to take this break. And I want to encourage each and every one of us to be aware of our need for the same thing. I want you to think about when was the last time you kind of just stop your cycle or your routine, or you're just kind of stuck in the rut doing what you're doing, and take a break and just shut down. Even if you think like things might fall apart, it's okay. You're going to get back to the same routine very soon. So we need these times. And as I feel like I benefited from this time, I'm encouraging each and every one of us, just unplug for a little bit. Unplug, take a break, change things up in your life. It's really important. This morning I want to talk about another aspect of the life of the resurrection. And believe it or not, it may not be what you would associate with as powerful living. When you think of the resurrection, you think, I am going to take over the world, right? I have the power of the resurrection. If you're looking for seats, there's a bunch up here. There's some in the middle over there, some over here in the second row. And if you can find a seat now before the middle of the talk so that it doesn't get distracting. When you think about living the life of resurrection, you're like, that's it. I'm just going to take over the world. I have the power of God working through me. I can do anything, and I'm going to go. And I'm going to start out with this story about something called the Messiah complex. Okay? The Messiah complex is a state of mind in which somebody sees themselves in a very grandiose way. I'm going to tell you a story of 3 people who suffered from this complex. So this was not just a touch of narcissism or pride or, people that were just, wanted to see themselves in big ways. These were 3 chronic psychiatric patients at a hospital in Michigan, all diagnosed with psychotic, delusional disorder, grandiose type. And I'm going to explain what that means. I'll explain what it means in a second. Each one maintained he was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ, and each one believed that he was the central figure around which the world revolved. 3 little messiahs. And there was a psychiatrist that came, and he wanted to figure out how it was that he was going to treat them. And he wrote about all these different attempts to help these men come to grips with the truth about themselves and learn to be just who they are. Leon, Joseph, and Clyde. He spent 2 years working with those men, and it was so hard. Every day he tried to tell them, you're not the Messiah. You're not Jesus Christ, and they couldn't accept it. They almost felt as if they were no longer the Messiah anymore, them and all of the world would lose its salvation. That the whole world would fall apart if they themselves could no longer accept being a Messiah. So he decided to try an experiment to put the 3 of them in a group. He said, instead of keeping them and treating them each individually, I'm going to take these 3 messiahs who are dealing with a Messiah complex, and I'm going to put them in a group. And they were assigned to sleep in adjacent beds next to each other, sit at every meal together, having discussions, working at the same job, every day working next to each other and going through the system. They had some very funny conversations. One of the men would claim, I'm the Messiah, the Son of God. I've been sent to the earth for a special mission. So the psychologist would say, how do you know that? The guy would say, God told me. And then the other guy sitting next to him would say, I didn't say anything like that. And they would just keep going back and forth because every single one of them thought they were the Christ. Everyone thought that they were Jesus Christ themselves. And the more and more they began to be together, they began to realize that maybe they're not the Messiah when they started to work in a group. You see, once we isolate, and once we kind of isolated these patients and say, okay, you're not the Messiah, they say, no, I am. But when you see with 3 other people that are Messiahs, or Christs, or gods, they start to realize, wait, something might be wrong with me. Every once in a while, one of the men would get a glimmer of reality. One of them, his name was Leon. He eventually decided that he wasn't actually married to the Virgin Mary after all. She was his sister-in-law. So he was slowly starting to make this distance from this concept that I'm the Messiah. And you might say, okay, what does this have to do with me? I want each and every one of us to be completely honest with ourselves. Recently, I discovered that I have a little bit of Messiah complex in me. I have this complex in me that often I think that so many things in my life revolve around me that I have this urge to control, that I feel like I am, that I am the glue that holds things together. And I started to realize that this is becoming dangerous. Obviously, it's not the complex that would send me to a mental institution, but I began to realize that it's the same thing that manifested itself in the oldest story of the Bible. And that's the story of Adam and Eve. Through pride, the serpent tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. He said, "For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God." You see, Eve had this desire that maybe I will be God. Maybe I will be like God and I will get to, run the show. And this is where she felt. She wanted to become like God, which is not wrong because she was created in the likeness of God. But she wanted to become like God apart from God. And I want us to kind of think about how in our own ways, we're all trying to take God's place, ever since that point. So what I want to do is recognize pride in ourselves and figure out its features, and then we're going to figure out how to fix it. The first one is vanity. I never understood why there are mirrors, for example, all over the gym. It's like as you're like pumping iron, okay, I'm seeing the muscles grow in my arm. Like, why do you need a mirror? And we're sitting there reflecting as if the last 8 minutes of running on the treadmills have made me, like thighs of steel. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's vanity. My favorite. And if you're one of these people, don't be offended. Maybe it's cute for you. The, selfie in a mirror while I'm doing, a funny look and whatever. Maybe it's not vanity for you, but if I were to do it, the things that would bring me to do it maybe would be my own vanity. I want to see myself, I'm going to pose in a special way, and then I'm going to post it to the whole world. We have to be careful of the things, because what vanity is it involves a preoccupation with my image. Maybe you see a group picture of you and your friends. And what are you doing? You're scoping out yourself. And even though there's 10 of your best friends in the picture, all you're staring at is, how did my hair look that day? Look at my lips, they look a little thick. My eyebrows are out of whack. And we start to realize that I have a little bit of what? The Messiah complex. That this whole group picture is all about me in the right corner, under the, behind the basket. I have this. Next thing is stubbornness. Stubbornness. Proverbs 29 verse 1. It says, "Whoever stubbornly refuses to accept criticism will suddenly be destroyed beyond recovery." This is the type of pride that causes us to reject being corrected. Reject being corrected. Again, I'm confessing, open confession, Orthodox sermons, nice to meet you. I have the Messiah complex. I have the Messiah complex. I get defensive. I don't want to accept that I'm right or I'm wrong and you're right. And so I get defensive. Something you might realize when speaking to somebody who gets defensive, what are the chances defensive people will thank you for pointing out their defensiveness? It's not going to happen, right? You say, why are you getting so defensive? You say, thank you so much for pointing that out in me. I'm not defensive, man. And we start to feel like, I'm stubborn. What do you mean? I'm not the Messiah. I'm not as great as I think I am. The true power of resurrection isn't that I would take over the world. The true power of resurrection is with God's help, I can be myself. I can accept to be myself. With my flaws, with my weaknesses, with my habits, with my socks on the floor, with my messed up hair, with my beard out of whack. I can accept just to be myself. But it's really hard. Can I get an amen? Does anybody feel like it's hard? Does anybody feel like it's hard to accept just being me? But I want to be something bigger. I want to be something greater. I want to be something more than I really am. When you resolve to not even apologize for the small wrong that you've done to others. Maybe you and a friend are having conflict. You are having conflict, and you might have been 1% of the whole conflict. 1%. Your lack of willingness to even apologize for that 1% shows this pride, this Messiah complex, that I have to be right, that I want to do everything. Then you get exclusion. At the deepest level, pride is the choice to exclude both God and other people from the rightful places in our hearts. Christ made it so clear that the essence of spiritual life is to love God and to love people. And if you were just to say, forget the whole Bible, just read the Gospels and take the words of Christ himself and know no other thing except for the words in the Gospel, it's going to be two very simple statements. Love God and love others. But what happens? I can't love others. I can't love others because of whatever it is. Pride destroys our capacity to love. Resurrection, the glory of Christ's resurrection, can infuse in you the power and the capacity to love people that you find yourself excluding or rejecting. Greedy people, gluttonous people may still be capable of at least a certain kind of love. But proud people can't love. Pride people cannot love. Maybe you and me are struggling with this pride thing. Can't be corrected. And I feel like I want to exclude others instead of embrace. I want you to think about people that you might be excluding today in your life. Maybe they're difficult. Maybe they are troubled people. Maybe they are broken people. And you know that they are extremely difficult. And they keep on hurting you. And so, psychology and counsel will say what? Cut them out. Cut them out of your life. If they keep on hurting you, you do what? You cut them out. That's not spirituality, that's exclusion. What the Bible would tell you is love, love, love until you overcome. Because love never fails. Love endures all things, bears all things, hopes all things, believes all things. Love never fails. So whatever it is that you might find yourself excluding because maybe they're not as good as me. They're not as smart as me. They don't have as much social tact as I have. And so to be around these people is difficult. That's the Messiah complex. You and me might be struggling with the Messiah complex. You see, it moves us to judge rather than to serve. It means not only that we want to be smart and wealthy, but also that we will not be satisfied until we are smarter and wealthier than everybody else. That is the Messiah complex. I want to be smarter and wealthier than everybody else. Not that I'm just happy to be me. I do like what I do, and I think I do it well. But no, I got to be better than that guy. Messiah complex. We have it. It's a disease. It's a spiritual disease that has penetrated through all of mankind. And it is the root at the core of the fall of man. It's pride. When you find yourself comparing yourself to every single person, there is a definite sign of pride. Luke chapter 18. It says, "Then Jesus told the story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. 2 men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer, 'I thank you, my God, that I am not like other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give you a tenth of my income.'" When you hear this prayer, sometimes in the church, you might think, this is the resurrection. I'm not like any of these people. What does he say? I don't cheat. I'm not an adulterer. And I'm definitely not like the tax collector. You're perfect. That's the life of resurrection, right? But this person didn't go home justified. He didn't go home justified. The sins of the tax collector were obvious to everyone. Greed, dishonesty, corruption. And the Pharisee thanked God that he was in a different category. He was mistaken about one thing. He completely failed in the eyes of God because he failed to love his brother and he failed to see that he needed God. Maybe you today are going and thinking, I'm fine. I got things down, my job is okay, my relationship is okay, my school is okay, like I'm doing well in school, I'm on track, I'm doing everything is okay. So like, when I need him, I'll plug God in just for the brief, maybe he can just help me with his little talent of this wherever I have struggles. And so we think that we are the Pharisee. And again, sometimes the mind of the person in church is saying, if I could just become like that guy, give my tithes, not be like this, and this, that's the power of the resurrection. But the publican, the tax collector, beat his chest and said, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And the Bible says that he went away more justified than the Pharisee. You see, he could not figure, his pride severed him completely from being all that God wanted him to be. You see, in response to our pride, Christ invites us to a life of humility. Pride and lovelessness always go together. What does it say in the beginning? It says, Jesus told the story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. That is not resurrection. That is death. And you might be saying, well, okay, I know I did it maybe once, twice. It's not just you, it's me too. It's all of us. It's in us. It's this temptation to think that the world has taught us that the greater you become and the better you become than everybody else, you're the best. And Christ has done this mystery. He turned it all around. And the power of the resurrection would mean that you would see yourself in your true light. That would take the resurrection of Jesus Christ himself for you to be able to see yourself as a weak sinner that is in desperate need of God's grace and goodness. See, humility is not about convincing ourselves or others that we are unattractive or incompetent. It is not about beating ourselves up for trying to make ourselves nothing. That is not humility. It has to do with self-forgetfulness. You know you've progressed in humility when you find that you get so enabled by the Holy Spirit to live in the moment that we cease to be preoccupied with ourselves. Wouldn't it be great for you to stop being preoccupied with yourself? That you can actually be here and just enjoy versus I wonder what they think about that joke that I just said or like the dress that I'm wearing or and all of a sudden you realize we're too preoccupied with ourselves. Humility is to say, I'm in the moment the way I am. Take it or leave it. This is who I am. And by God's grace, I will be able to be what I am. St. Paul says, and I thank God for I am who I am. I am who I am. He was happy about that. I want us to think about this humility and what would be the signs of humility. When you're with others, you ever think about maybe how others, like sometimes our relationship, how can this relationship benefit me? That's not humility. There's some relationships, anytime you engage with these people, they're going to just tell you over and over again, okay, like, could you, like, help me out with this, and can you do this, and can you, like, the relationship is only built on how you benefit me. That's not humility. That I would think how I, and we're going to talk about this, can think about others, not be so preoccupied with myself. It means to forget yourself and care about others. It's the freedom to stop trying to be what we're not, for pretending to be what we're not, and accepting being small. How many of you today would be satisfied with yourself in today's society, just being who you are? I'm not the hero priest of whatever, or I'm just like not the prettiest girl, or the greatest lawyer, or the greatest whatever, smartest kid in my, like senior class. Whatever it is that you are, can you just accept being yourself? What if there was nothing that added value to you because of the things that you do? You just are who you are, and I'm just going through life the way I am, and by God's grace, He's going to transform me day after day, not to become the Messiah, but to become really who God created me to be. That is resurrection. Resurrection is not that I would be something other than what God has intended for me to be. And we're going to get how to make that practical. We're going to think about what is the way that we can pursue humility. Everyone who is pursuing spiritual growth is going to have to deal with the persistent problem of pride. Every time I try to do something good, I'm intensely aware, and I tend to be aware of other people who are putting forth the same effort. So every time I do something, I'm aware of it. When can the good that I do become my second nature? Like, today I moved the chairs to the back and nobody else did. Today I made the coffee and nobody helped me out. Today I came and sat up here and nobody else did what I did today. And as I begin to offer myself to God, I'm doing it trying to be something again. That's not the goal. Do you see how this temptation penetrates in every part of your life? Even in your service. Like, you pick up the trash. I love it when you see somebody just picks up the trash and they do it, and like they don't notice that they're doing it. That's just like their second nature. You say, wow, that's so sweet of you that you took out the trash. Look, what are you talking about? You took out the trash. You're like, what's the big deal? Like there's people that says, did you notice? We need everybody start picking up the trash. Last week I picked up the trash and I did Mashara Fain. No. I just want to be who I am and accept who I am. More than any other single way to grow in humility, service is the best. Nothing disciplines your desires of the flesh more than service, and nothing transforms the desires of the flesh like serving in secret. Nothing transforms the desires of your flesh than service, and service in secret. We're going to talk about that. Philippians 2, 5-7. You see the mind of Jesus. And I read something, it was very touching. It says in Philippians 2, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant. What was it that Jesus did? This passage is telling us that we should have the same attitude or mindset as Christ. The same attitude or mindset as Christ. When Christ came as a servant, he was not disguising who God is, he was revealing who God is. Once again, when Christ came as a servant, he was not disguising who God was. He didn't say, okay, it's like Superman. You guys ever watch Superman? You know, the good old days. He's Clark Kent, and he's a dorky guy with the glasses, and he wears a shirt and tie, and he's always clumsy. And then something happens, he goes into a phone booth, dun, 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 and he pulls off his shirt, and he's Superman. He was disguised. Jesus Christ is not wearing the disguise of a servant, okay? He's revealing who God is when he became a servant. He's saying God is a servant. God is a servant, and this is resurrection. This is what you need to become as a servant if you are going to be like Christ. To be like Christ is to be a servant. not to act like a servant. Not say, okay, because I'm humble, I got to act like a servant. No. Because I want to be like God, I must be a servant, or I have nothing to do with the nature of God, who being in the very form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a servant. Because that is the way of God. That's the way of God. 1 John 3:14, one of the most beautiful verses in the Bible. We know that we have passed from death to life because we love the brethren. You know that you have passed from death to eternal life. How? By floating when you pray. Loving the brethren. And he who does not love his brother abides in death. Take it as you like it. That's it. You must love your brother. You must be a servant to be a son of God. You know that you have resurrection when you have the heart of a servant. And I pray that this would be something that we would become more and more aware of. Jesus knew that even his own followers were wrestling with this Messiah complex. They said, which one of us is greatest? Which one of us is greatest? Jesus says, brings up a little boy and says, right here. Come on, stop with the spiritual words. Which one of us is greatest? Come on, you saw what I did yesterday. I walked on water. I walked on water. Don't tell me that this kid is better than the guy that walked on water. This is the one. This is the greatest in God's eyes. This is the power of resurrection, that you could be just a boy that, like, you know your kids, like, they just kind of like put you out and blast in front of guests. That's just God saying, they're just themselves. I didn't know that wasn't right, that I shouldn't have said that, Daddy was doing whatever, God knows what. Like, shh, don't tell everybody I do that. No, we kind of the kid just is who they are. Take it or leave it. The best. Parents try to get their kids to act a certain way. Okay, Abuna's coming, kiss his hand and sing a hymn. Says, I'm not touching Abuna. And my kid didn't get enough sleep last night. They'll make these excuses why their kids are messed up, right? And they didn't do this, or they're fussy, or they're... Look, man, my kid is just messed up, okay? My kid doesn't want to kiss your hand. My kid doesn't want to hug Darth Vader. It's okay. The kid is happy to say, I don't care if you're the Pope of Rome. I don't care who you are. I'm not hugging you, man. That's the kid. Be like the kid. Be like the kid. All right. We got to get to the point where you say, okay, well, how can I serve? Where are my talents? And where am I? I want you to serve out of weakness. I want you to say, I have nothing to give, and so I'm going to wait for God to give me. St. Paul, when Christ appeared to St. Paul, and Christ said, why are you kicking against the goads? And fine, St. Paul accepts Jesus and says, all right, what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to go to the Gentiles. You're St. Paul. I'm the best Jew ever. Send me to the Jews. I will make every single Jew know that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He says, really? Okay, you're going to go to the Gentiles. When am I the Gentiles? Send me to the Jews, I'll go to the Pharisees. I'll go to the people of the law, and I will give them all the thises and the that's, and I'll show them what's right and what's wrong. They'll all become Christian. Really? Go to the Gentiles. Why? Because then you will serve out of your weakness. And St. Paul says, I rather boast in my weaknesses. I boast in my infirmities, in my weaknesses, in my needs, in my reproaches. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. That's the mystery of the Christian life, that when I am weak, when I have nothing to give, that God will infuse me with himself, not myself, the Messiah. The best way to grow in this humility that God desires is the ministry of the ordinary. When I observe the selfless service of a mother, a selfless service of a mother that wakes up all night to be with the kids and then gets them dressed in the morning and then takes them to school and then makes their sandwiches and gets home and cooks and then starts cleaning and then does whatever and says, honey, do you need, tea? And then, come on, this is crazy. How could you possibly do all this? It became second nature. This is what I witnessed in the other woman in my house. The woman in my house, I looked at Sherry, I'm saying, wow, that's How do you do that? When I had to take care of the kids, for 10 days, there was a time where Sherry had to go away. Tell me to go to my room and do 10,000 matanyas by myself, I'll be happy to. Tell me to take care of a kid for one day, I'm going to jump out of a window. I can't do it. And I realized I can go give a lecture on service and how we need to do this and the power of the resurrection, but just don't make me watch the kids today. The ministry of the ordinary will give you humility. Helping out your brother, helping out your parents at home, doing things that are just mundane, this will remove the self, because no one's going to praise you for doing the dishes, like that's your job. No one's going to praise you for doing the laundry because like somebody in the house has to do the laundry. No one's going to praise you for taking out the trash because that's what you're supposed to do. And you learn how to become a humble being in the mundane, not in the glorious. I'm going to go to God knows where. We're going to go to Greece and we're going to serve the refugees. And we're going to do it first at home. Serve the little 3 refugees at your house, okay? And let me know how that goes. Ministry of the mundane or the ordinary will make the goodness of God in you second nature. Second nature. Just second nature. I just think like this is how my mind has been transformed. That is the power of the resurrection. The ministry of being interrupted. This is the servanthood of being available for others. Do you give off the impression that you can be interrupted in your life? It makes me sad when people say, but Abuna, you're so busy. I say, I'm the worst. If people feel like I'll never be available for them because I'm busy, then I'm not a servant for you, Lord. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart when it says, but Abuna, you're so busy. I'm saying, really? Is that how people see me, that I'm not available? I don't care if I'm busy. I'm available. I want to be available. And you need to learn how to be available, how to have the heart of being available for others. That you know that when you're in need, you just call on me. When you read about the Russian elders in monasteries in Russia, the elder who lives in solitude, not isolation, leaves the latch of his door off. You say, the spiritual elder of the monastery has his latch off in order that he would be available for the needs of his brothers. I said, wow. The spiritual elder of a whole monastery has his latch off of his door so that he can say, I'm available. Yeah, I've reached the third heaven in my cave, but I'm available for your needs. Because that is the commandments. That is what's going to give me resurrection. That's what's going to give me the life of Christ. It's being able to be available. We have to be interruptible for tasks that are not on our agendas. This area, so I've lived elsewhere, this area is like the Google Calendar and the Maraf Shee, and everybody's got their whatevers, and we're so obsessed with our agendas and our tasks. We say, sorry, I don't have time because you didn't fit in the schedule. You didn't make it to my Google Calendar. But we're never going to be servants. We're never going to be selfless beings. We're never going to be like Christ until we learn the ministry of being available for others. When my schedule gets busy, I realize, you know what? I need to take a day off and just say, all right, Sherry, I'm here. What do you want me to do? No phone, no this, no that. Like, I'm just here. But when I called, you didn't respond. I'm like, talk to Sherry. I'm available for Sherry. You know, like, you have to. We have to do these things. I have to be available to those that know that I'm here for you. I'm never too busy for anyone. Genesis 18. It's an amazing passage. Abraham, the father of patriarchs, okay, who's 100 years old, received all the promises of God that he was going to be the father of many nations, was promised by God himself that you will have a child and stars of the sky and sand of the seashore. You're going to be the greatest. It says Abraham, he had 318 servants that worked for him. It says, then the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. Any of you guys ever been to Egypt? Okay, in the heat of the day? If you were to be anywhere in a tent in the middle of Egypt hot, where would you be? On the inside. Where was Abraham? In the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground and said, My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by inasmuch as you have come to your servant. Abraham the Great, if Abraham would have said, okay, I have 300 servants, 200 of you guys, stand here and find anybody in need and just serve them. You say, wow, that's amazing. Abraham said, no one's taking my blessing. Abraham, the 100-year-old man, St. John Chrysostom says that he didn't know that this was God himself. These were just Bedouins or nomads passing by, and he was just making himself available to serve anybody that would be in need. Abraham, you are the man of promise. Who cares about those people? They don't even know God. I'm available. At the tent door in the heat of the day. Anybody in need? Anybody need something? And when he says he bowed down to them. He's 100 years old. Bowing down to dirty, filthy passerbys. Amazing. Next is embracing our limitations. People ask, why are you so busy? I'm afraid things will fall apart in my life or in the church, and so I stay busy. I tell this to Sherry. I don't want things to fall apart, so I got to go do this, and I got to do that, and I got to do this. And then I step back and say, really? Like, if I don't do those things, is everything going to fall apart? And I started to realize that I have this grandiosity in my mind and my heart that I got to stay busy, and I got to meet with these people, and I got to make these people happy, and I got to serve here, and I got to stand up here, and I got to visit this group, and I got to... All that is not because of any other thing other than proving to myself that I'm great. In God's eyes, maybe not matter. In your eyes, it may not matter, and here I am. I'm building inside myself the Messiah complex. St. Anthony says this. A theologian, his name is John Chrysostom, says, St. Anthony says, when you know and embrace your frailties, then you can learn to love yourself. Again, when you know and embrace your frailties or your weaknesses, then you can learn to love yourself. Then you learn to love the Lord your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. We made one of the best conclusions here at this church. We had at one point like 60 ministries in the church. And some very wise young men came to the priest and said, no more ministries. You don't need 65 ministries. Slow down and just serve faithfully. And I thank those people who know they know who they are, who just say, stop adding more ministries. Oh, let's add a new ministry for this. And a new grandiosity. And thank God, Buddha showing his wisdom because I'm saying, okay, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And he kept on shrinking. You want to become humble and have the power of the resurrection working through you? Bite your tongue. How many times do we, at business meetings or in gatherings, speak up just to show everyone how much we know? How many times do you want to give your 2 cents just to show everybody, by the way, I know very much about this topic, and I have a lot to share, and probably my idea is going to be better than yours. And I won't be satisfied. Your idea is good. My idea has to be better. And so I got to speak up to prove that my idea is better than your idea. Bite your tongue for a second. You want to be humble? Just be quiet. Don't try to prove that you are better than others. I need to let go of sharing even my spiritual progress with others. I remember in counseling one of my spiritual sons, I was sharing something that I got to experience for a season in my life. And as soon as I shared it, I never had that experience again. And I remember I went to my father confession. I'm like, what happened? I try to do it all the time. I can't. I try to go back to that way of praying or living, and like I can't do it. And he says, did you share it with somebody? I said, yeah. I was like, God. He says, no, it's gone. He said, maybe struggle, pray, maybe it'll come back. But for years, I want it back. I can't. Why? Because I shared it. Bite your tongue. Don't try to prove that you're more spiritual than others or that you have it all figured out. Next thing is the ministry of bearing one another's burdens. Bear with people until I learn to love them. It's not just tolerating difficult people, it's also learning to hear God speak through anybody else. Do you believe that God can speak through somebody annoying? Do you believe that God, that person that always nitpicks at you and tells you, oh, I hate your sermons and I hate Mashadaf A and your Galabayas are dirty, like that person? Do you think maybe God could be speaking to them? I'm just saying this person needs to be punished by the Lord. Like this person needs to get out of my life or out of my face. If I would bear with them, maybe, just maybe, God can speak to me through them. Do you believe that God can speak to you through a difficult person, through a complainer, through a broken person? If I could respect others, that would be resurrection. If I can honor all people and understand that God can speak to me through others, it would take the power of the resurrection to transform me to listen to people that maybe I believe don't know as much as me. That's resurrection. I pray today that we would be set free from the Messiah complex and walk with God accepting who we are. And glory be to God forever. Amen. Let's stand up and pray.